welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and specifically I want to talk about the Dungeon Master Kit. What sort of equipment or gear do you need, or what sort of gear or equipment do Dungeon Masters use? And as it happens, every Dungeon Master uses different things, so I thought what I would do is I would go over the absolute basics, and then I would add a whole lot of additional stuff that you can use, you do not have to, but that you can use, and then explain why people use them and how they use them. So it's not really super complicated, this stuff. I would imagine there'll be a few things people haven't heard of before, but some of it will be probably nothing new, particularly if you've Dungeon Mastered for a long time. I think this is more tailored for people who have just started out really, or who are new. So I'm going to say one thing when it comes to dungeon mastering before we start talking about the kit very, very quickly, and that is one of the key things is surprising your players with unexpected events and encounters, and something that they can't predict. Now, I can't tell you how to do that. You literally have to learn how your players operate, how they think, and then work on their body language and what they're saying and what you think they're thinking, and do the exact opposite or something that they weren't expecting. And that's something that I really can't give you a lot of information on, but it works really well, and it makes life at the table very entertaining for you and the players. So just a little quick hint and tip. So one of the basics when it comes to getting your Dungeon Master kit together is you'll need the basic rules. Now you can get them free online. Wizards of the Coast provides a free PDF for the Player's Guide and the Dungeon Master's Guide. Now the Player's Guide has basically just the core rules. You can download that for free, costs you nothing. Additionally, you can get the Dungeon Master's information as well, and it's just a very small amount of information out of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Not everything, it's like a couple of pages, and then just a whole lot of monster stat blocks so that you can run monsters. That's really all it is. Now there's also the SRD. The Dungeons and Dragons 5e SRD is available to anybody for free. You can download it, and yes, I will provide a link below in the description later on so you can click it on and actually access it, print that out, or put it into your laptop or your tablet or whatever you're using. So I know that would be helpful to you, so it will be in the description. Dice, usually at least one set of dice. I tend to carry a lot of extra d20s. So when you're dealing with more than one monster, I don't like rolling a d20 more than once. I really just want to grab a bunch of d20s and roll them all at once. But dice, you will need them. Mechanical pencils. Now a pencil's fine, but I find mechanical pencils are probably cheaper nowadays, have a little rubber at the end, and you can replace the leads. So as long as they don't get lost, it's really helpful, and you can write really small with a mechanical pencil compared to a normal pencil which you have to sharpen, and there's sharp shavings everywhere, it's messy. So mechanical pencils are really handy. You'll also want something like some blank paper. Now I just use photocopy paper. A4 photocopy paper is fine, it's cheap, it's easy to access, I can move it around, I don't have to worry about tearing it out of a notebook. Or you can use just refill paper, that's fine. A notepad, an exercise book, anything to keep notes in. Initiative cards. Now you can just make them out of paper. When I say initiative cards, literally I just mean something to keep track of initiative. Now whether that's just one card or a whole lot of little long strips that you dangle over, say something like a DM screen, or you make little tents out of and place in front of you so people can see where they sit in the initiative order during your combat, that's fine. Do whatever works for you, whatever is cheapest. There are plenty of different options. Okay, I would also say that something like a plastic folder or file folder for storing notes. You can just use a normal folder, it's fine, but I think those see-through clear flip file folder things that you can put, have they in sort of the see-through transparent sheets that you can remove and put more in, they're really, really helpful, and it's really small. It's a lot smaller and more compact than your normal ring binder. A ring binder usually has a bit more thickness to it, whereas those other little flip file things, the clear sheets, they're really thin, so it's easy to store. So I would recommend those, but you don't have to have them. As I said, try to keep your expenditure down, particularly when you're starting out. Now, in an adventure, you need to have a printed adventure of some kind, whether that's printed out from a PDF or an adventure book or something you have created and written on paper. It doesn't matter, but you need some sort of adventure, or at least adventure notes. It doesn't necessarily have to be a complete and concise adventure, but it has to be enough to be able to run something for a session. And then character sheets. Now, I would suggest that blank character sheets are a good idea. I would like to think that my players will bring their own character sheets, but some don't. So I would say blank character sheets, and that's really the gist of it. Nowadays, with the invention of the smartphone, most people have a smartphone, and I would still say this is optional, but a smartphone that you can put apps on and record stuff on and generally just use as a tool. I think the cell phone is one of the biggest tools that a Dungeon Master can have nowadays, and I highly recommend having one, but it is optional. You do not have to have it. Okay, so that is the basics. Let's get into the more involved stuff. Things that pretty much you don't have to have, but are nice to have if you want. These are like extra things. Now, I'm going to make a list of everything I've talked about in the description. I'm not going to talk about in the description all the details around them, but I will make a list of everything that I have talked about in this video so you can sort of itemize and go through it. I will also, because I'm talking about a few things that cost money, I will also provide an Amazon affiliate link to items if you want to buy them off Amazon, or you could just go down to your game store and buy the item off them as I talk about it. And look, honestly, I don't make an awful lot of money off YouTube ad revenue, and the Amazon affiliate link is really helpful. You click it on, it doesn't charge you anything more. You pay the same price, and I get a small commission from Amazon. And the nice thing about it is when you click it on, if you go somewhere else and buy something else that's unrelated to Dungeons and Dragons or the link that I provided, I still get a small commission, and it costs you no more. So if you ever wanted to support my channel, that would really be helpful. But let's get on to the things that you can get that are additional and they do cost a little bit of money. So something like the Pathfinder Flip Mat. Now there's lots of different types of battle mats you can get, but by far the best, cheapest, and most usable and friendly to anybody is the Pathfinder Flip Mat. This is the basic one. I've done a review on this particular mat before, and it is literally perfect for what you want. You can use a dry erase, wet erase, permanent marker. Seriously, you can put a permanent marker on it and it will still come off. You can't say the same for a lot of other battle maps. It just isn't the case. This is a really good product. Now you don't have to use a grid in battle maps, but if you do want to, that is probably the one I would suggest. Then at dry erase markers. Dry erase markers are a dime a dozen. You can pick them up from a game store, from a stationery place. You can buy them on Amazon. You can buy them anywhere. There's the dime a dozen. Easy to get. And you just need a couple of colours. Nothing else. That's it. That'll do. If you're working with, say, wet erase markers, wet erase marker will also work on the Pathfinder Flip Mat. So will permanent markers. So if you get confused and you wind up taking your Sharpie, it won't matter. You will be able to get it off. Next is 3x5 index cards. Now these are the index cards that you used to be able to access in a library when you're going through their catalogues, and it's basically just a piece of card. You could make your own. You could just cut them up from a bit of card. It's not an issue, and really what's the purpose? Keeping notes on it, but also it's really handy if you want to put the monster stat block, write the key details of the monster on there so that you don't have to flip from one page to another in your monster manual or your PDF of the Dungeon Master Guide that's free online with all the monster stats. So little cards are really helpful for actually having information readily available, particularly if you have to deal with more than one monster. If there's more than one monster, it can be a bit tricky. Okay, next, tokens, pawns, and miniatures. Look, there are different ways of getting access to tokens. Tokens could be anything. They could be the old Dungeons and Dragons 4E tokens. They could be the Pathfinder Paizo pawns that you can purchase. I have shown people how to make their own tokens and their own pawns. You can make your own little paper standees or cardboard standing miniatures, or you can buy the plastic miniatures, whether they're painted, unpainted, doesn't matter where you get them from, but there is another option in terms of play. And usually you'll use that with something like a flip mat or a battle map of some kind. It's really good for players who have a lot of trouble visualizing the position of monsters and their characters at the table. I know some players can do that very, very easily. Some dungeon masters are very good at it, but sometimes it's a bit harder for other people, and it's a good visual aid. You don't always have to use them. Sometimes you just put the battle map out and you just leave it there but don't actually use it. Okay, moving on. Pre-generated characters. Now, I find that most people will come to the table with an idea for their character that they have already built, or they've got an app on their phone that they've already created a character. Sometimes people want to build it and create it just before the game, and you don't want to be spending half an hour or an hour creating a character, so don't do that. Give them a pre-generated character sheet, get them to select one at the level that you're playing at, and then they can make another character later on to fit in. I think that pre-generated characters are an absolute must for beginner players. Rather than trying to work out how to build characters, just give them a pre-generated character sheet. So, and it won't cost you very much. You know, it's like the ink in your printer and a bit of paper. So it's pretty cheap. Next is, now when it comes to books, outside of the free stuff, when you're a dungeon master, what books do you buy first? This is the order of book buying that I would suggest. The Player's Handbook is the key Dungeons & Dragons, particularly for 5e, Dungeons & Dragons book. That's the core book. You need that. That's the one you really do need. It has most of the rules in it. Literally everything that you would need to run an encounter. All the nuances, all the core rules, and how the characters, the core classes work, how the races work, so you can look that up. So the Player's Handbook is the first book that you want to purchase. After that, I would say for a Dungeon Master, if you're going to purchase another book, it's the Monster Manual. I know what you're thinking, what about the Dungeon Master's Guide? No, the Dungeon Master's Guide is the last book you buy. Okay, you can run the game without the Dungeon Master's Guide, but it's much harder to run a game without the Player's Handbook or the Monster Manual. Those are the books you really want. And I think you'll find that I'm right about this. Sometimes it's just too expensive to go out and buy all three books all at once, and you need to buy them and stagger them over time. And a lot of stuff I've been given by, birthdays, Christmas, stuff like that. Christmas is coming up. So yeah, just remember that's the order of the books that you want. Okay, so next, when it comes to items that I have seen used at the table, one of the most useful tools, as I said, is the cell phone, the smartphone. It's got a screen, it does so much. But a lot of Dungeon Masters use a laptop or a tablet, and sometimes those e-readers. I don't know if people have seen them before, but they're really good for keeping a PDF on. Now, I know you can't get the core Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, or Dungeon Master's Guide as a PDF legally, okay? I'm not suggesting that you break the law or break copyright or anything like this, but the simple matter is that you can access that information. I've seen people with all that information accessible through D&D Beyond, and they've used just their phone. It's so small. Laptop, it's light. I'll tell you, a laptop is a lot lighter than carrying three books, the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Monster Manual, and the Player's Handbook. A tablet, even lighter again. And you can turn it around and show your players pictures and images of scenes and characters or monsters as you're playing the game. I've done that myself. It's really, really helpful, but it's expensive. So unless you've got it, don't go running out there and buying one. Okay, you don't have to have it. I talked very briefly about the battle mat. You can get a Chessex vinyl battle mat. I've done a review on that particular product. I don't think that it is a good product for a new Dungeon Master. There are benefits. It will last longer if you know how to look after it than a Pathfinder Flip Mat. simply because it's made out of vinyl and it doesn't fold up. You have to roll it. The flip mat, as you fold it and unfold it over time, it will start to perish and you'll start to get holes forming in the creases. So it is another option. And obviously make sure if you're going to use the Chessex vinyl battle mat, use wet erase markers only. No dry erase. No permanent markers. Absolutely not. You can only use wet erase markers. And I've done a video that explains which ones to use. You know, black, green, blue, those are all good colors. Those are fine. Stay away from red and essentially stay away from anything else. Chessex actually sells a set of pens specifically made for that mat, and you're probably safer to buy their pens than anybody else's. And if you don't know if it's going to be a problem, use the corner of your mat to test it. Okay, next, post-it pads. Little post-it pads, like the sticky things that you can stick onto anything. It's great for keeping notes. You can stick it onto a Dungeon Master screen. You can stick it onto the inside of your book as a marker. You can write notes on it and stick it inside a book or into your adventure and peel it away later on. You can take it off and give it to a player as a secret note. They're probably one of the most useful things I've come across, and I always tend to have at least a little pad of them. Yet again, you don't absolutely have to have them. BlueTEC, you know, that little sticky tacky stuff. So a little bit of that balled up allows you to stick miniatures on top of other miniatures. So if you want the players to decide to jump onto a monster, you can stick their character onto that monster, and instead of spending forever trying to position it or like, I'll give up and just leave it beside the miniature, you can actually stick it on top if you want to. You can also use it to stick things to your Dungeon Master screen. I would not advise using the Tack on your books because the surface is just not shiny enough, and you could wind up tearing or damaging the book or leaving marks, because the Tack does sort of, it absorbs the oil from your fingers, and so that oil will go into the pages of your book as well. Just like when you're eating your pizza, the pizza oil will go into your book as well. Okay, story cubes. Rory's story cubes. I use them for actually generating characters. Sly Flourish or Mike Show has done a video on that particular topic and how useful they can be. They're very small. It's about 9 dice with pictures on it. I've done videos on that as well. You should be able to find that and how to use them. Mike Show has done a video on that particular topic as well. Really, really helpful for generating ideas on the fly, improvising. It's one of the most useful improvising tools you can use when you're starting out and you struggle at that sort of thing. Next, I would say plot twist cards. Now, I did a video, I think I did 2 videos on plot twist cards. Plot twist cards are put out by Game Mastery. It's a Paizo or Pathfinder product. Now, it's got a mechanical aspect to it, but it's also got a descriptive section, and most of the card consists of suggestions and description and a little picture to demonstrate. And you can hand these out to your players to help change the game. You can also, that'll help teach you how to improvise. If they get cards they can play, don't give them too many, otherwise you'll turn it into Magic the Gathering rather than Dungeons and Dragons, the role-play game. But it's a good way of allowing your game to be improvised. It's a story reward, so maybe you give them this card and they can play it at some point. You don't have to accept their suggestion off the card. You can say, no, that's just a bit too powerful. As I said, I have explained how to use them. I know a lot of Dungeon Masters like the idea of them. They are something that you don't need to use, but they are cool. I really like them. I think they're quite interesting. And there are other types of cards like the Critical Fumble and the Critical Hit decks. There's lots of different types of Critical Fumble and Critical Hit decks. I don't think that necessarily the Critical Fumble is a type of card that you want to have your players contending with, but I think the Critical Hit idea is really cool because one, it gives a boost to the players, and also two, it makes it a bit more interesting. So lots of card options. Dungeon Master screen. Now there are lots of different Dungeon Master screens available. There's the generic one for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. There's lots of screens put out. Every storyline for the new version of Dungeons and Dragons has a Dungeon Master screen. Some are good, some are bad. I think most of them are pretty average or not so good. There is a new one called the Dungeon Master Screen Reincarnated. I did a review on that. It's a very good product, and if you're going to buy a Dungeon Master screen for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, that would be the one to buy. You can also make your own Dungeon Master screen, and I have a video on creating your own custom Dungeon Master screen. You can cut it out from cardboard. You can use panels. You can use an existing Dungeon Master screen, tear out the inside panels and put your own stuff in. How's it going, Ian? I think I've got it right. Hopefully I have. So yes, Dungeon Master screen. Now, why would you have a Dungeon Master screen? Dungeon Master screen is not there necessarily to hide your dice rolls. Really, the purpose is more it has useful information on the screen that you can refer to rather than picking up the player's handbook, or you're looking through your laptop or your tablet or your phone. All the key information is readily available. You just glance down, check what you need, and then look back up and keep going with the game. That's really the key reason for having a Dungeon Master screen. So that is the gist of that section. I would say you need a bag. If you're going portable and you're not running your game from home, either a suitcase. I usually use a suitcase. You probably can just make my suitcase out behind. It's a silver case. It's actually a tool case. I couldn't get a suitcase. It was going to be too expensive. So I bought myself a tool case. It's just made out of aluminium. It's pretty light. It's not very light once I stick everything in it, but it's light to begin with. And then just a duffel bag or some sort of carry bag just to put everything in. Next would be paper clips. It sounds weird, but paper clips are really handy. You can clip things onto your Dungeon Master screen. You can clip things onto your adventure notes. You can clip things onto your book. You can use them as markers. You can use them as condition markers. There's lots of different conditions. So if you have different coloured paper clips, as long as you know which colour represents what, you can use the different coloured paper clips to represent a condition and just place it down on a mat or against the character's tent stand if you've got one on the table, or if you've got an overhanging tag, initiative tag on your Dungeon Master screen, you can just slip that onto there. Lots of different ways of using it. You can use the bottle top circles. You know, when you pull the bottle top off, a plastic bottle top off, there's a funny little round circle around that. Get a whole lot of different coloured ones. You can use them. Pipe cleaners, really different coloured pipe cleaners. This is information that you can get from Mike's show and the Sly Flourish website. I will put that in the description as well. He's a really good Dungeon Master. He's got lots of really good advice. Some of his advice is what I'm talking about, but some of it's not. Okay, so you can use them. You can also get all sorts of things can be used as condition trackers so that you know what's going on. Otherwise, you've got to write notes on your piece of paper or your board that you're writing on. Maybe you've got a whiteboard, a small whiteboard. Actually, a little whiteboard can be very, very handy if you don't like using up paper. But trust me, there's a forest out there designed specifically to make paper, and every time you buy less paper, their stocks plummet. Okay, so don't worry too much about the paper. It's biodegradable, really. It's not an issue. Okay, but if you don't like paper and you want something that's reusable, very small whiteboard marker and a whiteboard, you can buy them usually in a small marketplace, Chinese markets, stuff like that. They usually have something like that. $2 shops. I don't know if you necessarily have a $2 market or store in your country, but you'll have something that's equivalent to that. Next, I would say speakers and iPod. I know a lot of people like music and sound effects. I don't really do that so much nowadays, but you can. So if you want to take music along and set the atmosphere, then take a speaker and your iPod and just plug it in and run it from there. It can be a really helpful tool for a Dungeon Master who wants to set the atmosphere, and just remember to turn it down when you need to talk and other people are talking, otherwise you've got the music blaring too loud. Okay, so pre-made maps. If you don't like having to draw your maps, essentially while the game is running, then you can draw your maps up on a piece of paper or on game paper with squares or whatever. You can do that yourself in advance. Just do them yourself, draw them up, and just roll them out when you need them. Or if you feel that's just too much effort, you can buy pre-made maps, and there's a whole bunch of them. Pathfinder, Game Mastery, Paizo, they make them. There's a whole bunch that have been put out by Gale Force 9. You can buy those. They're reusable. The only thing is you can't change the setting. So once you buy it, you're stuck with the same setting. That's the only hassle. So pre-made maps can be very, very helpful. I carry quite a few of them, and usually they're all made of paper, so I don't have to worry about rolling things up, so I can flatten them out. Next, I usually keep my miniatures or my tokens or pawns in either a clear container so I can see everything, or a toolbox. And I would suggest if you're going to use a toolbox to carry your miniatures around, or your tokens or your pawns, you can use the Ziploc bag. It's very, very helpful. It's nice and portable, doesn't take up a lot of space. But if you've got a lot of stuff, then you'll want a container, and I highly recommend clear containers so you can see everything. It's always the most horrible thing to open the box and I got to rummage through to find everything. That's a pain, it really is. Next would be a dice rolling app on your phone. If you've got a phone, get a dice rolling app. There's lots of different apps you can use on your phone, but a dice rolling app is one of the key things I would say is really, really helpful. Now that's not because you shouldn't be using the dice. You probably already got dice, but if you have to roll 20 dice, okay, 20 dice is a lot of dice. You're going to be there a long time. If you're dealing with a lot of attacks, it can be a drag. It's much easier to just program into an app how many dice you need to roll and roll them all at once. Does that make sense? Well, hopefully it does. Next, player handouts. If you have player handouts for your adventure, whether it's a pre-made, pre-published adventure, bring them along, or if you've made your own, bring them along. They'll cost maybe a little bit. It's like printing costs. So a few dollars or a few cents, maybe 10, 20 cents. It depends where you are. I don't know what your printing costs in your country are, but player handouts really cool. And players really like them. Also, homemade terrain. You can buy terrain. It's really expensive. It's really hard to store, but you could make your own terrain. I know a lot of people like using terrain. It gives it a three-dimensional feel, and it can bring your players more into the game, or it can sort of make them feel like they are playing a computer game. So you decide what you and your players prefer. That's probably the most sensible thing to do. Dungeon tiles. Now, I don't like dungeon tiles very much, but I know people do use them, and as long as you stick them down to something, and it'll stop them from moving around. There's a few dungeon tiles available from the Dungeons and Dragons board games that are interlocking, so they're like a jigsaw puzzle, but they have limited sort of options, and you have to probably buy quite a lot of boxes to get everything you wanted. And also too, you've still got to carry them around. It can be heavy. Cardboard is cardboard after all. So you've got to decide whether that's really your thing. I think it's more an option when you're playing in your own home and all your gear is there at home, rather than if you're being portable. You know, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, when you're going portable, it's just a hassle to carry. But if you're in your own home, that's a different story. Okay, TV and cables. I've seen a few dungeon masters who use their TV and a cable linked to their laptop to give players, you know, big images that they can show people. We're getting high tech now. Okay, you can literally put your battle map on a TV. Just turn it horizontal if you want, or you can put it up against the wall and show them all sorts of images. It's quite a cool way of actually doing stuff. I don't do it myself, but I've seen it done very well, and it was fun. Anyway, moving on. Make sure you bring something to drink and eat. Okay, don't rely on the players to bring you something to drink and eat. If you need to drink, make sure you bring some water or something to hydrate yourself. Because as you're running the game, you will get tired, your voice will get strained, you'll get dried out. You need to be able to drink often, and you need to keep your blood sugar up. So make sure you eat, bring some food. And by all means, eat the food that the players produce for you first. And you can eat your stuff later. Okay? All right, next. Bull clips. Now, bull clips are the benefit over a bull clip over a paper clip. Now, I said paper clips are really handy, but a bull clip can actually go onto a much thicker, it can clip onto something that's much thicker, which a paper clip really can't. They get bent and out of shape. So bull clips are really good. I like them on the top of my Dungeon Master screen because, one, they're easy to get back off. Usually I don't have to worry about the little wire on the paper clip tearing into my Dungeon Master screen because the bull clip doesn't do that. It's got rounded corners and edges so it doesn't damage the screen. And yeah, you can clip it onto something that's quite thick. So it can be very, very helpful for holding things in place. And a timer. Now you can use your phone as your timer for timing things, or you could use a watch, or you could use just an egg timer. When I say a timer, it doesn't really matter what the type of timer is. It's really unimportant. I tend to take an egg timer, usually that I can turn over, and I think it's about 30 seconds to 1 minute, and then the sand will run out. They can be very, very helpful for running your game. These are all tools. You don't have to have them, okay? But they can be useful, and sometimes just to make your life easier. I think as people go and play the game more, they wind up carrying more and more tools, but when you're going portable, it's not practical. So that's essentially all I want to do in terms of, I've talked about so much stuff. So if you found this video helpful and informative, please share, like, and subscribe. I do videos every day. Every day there's another video up. And very shortly I will be unemployed, which probably means that I will be doing a lot more videos and possibly streaming every day. So what I would like is for you, if you don't mind, is to click not just the like, subscribe, and make a comment. Making a comment that's useful is great, but there's apparently a little bell. There's like a bell underneath the video, and if you press that, apparently you get occasional notifications. Apparently a few people think that I haven't been posting for a long time. I didn't realize that YouTube had created this bell. It's like, couldn't we just click the subscribe button and that's it? The notifications bell, yeah, right. Is it Driga? Driga Wolf, yeah, exactly. Click that thing. Now, if you have questions about anything that I have talked about today, put them in the comments, okay, after the video goes off live. But if you're going to stay around, you can ask me in person, because I will hang around, and you can ask me about anything. You can ask me about the kit, or you can ask me about something unrelated to the kit. That's fine. If I've got enough information in my brain and my brain's working properly, I'll give you a straight answer. Okay? Really, really simple. And I will say this, that right now, as of, I think it's Wednesday, New Zealand Standard Time, I am currently unemployed. And every time you guys click on that Amazon link to buy something, you don't even have to buy the thing that I have linked to. You can go somewhere else. The starter kit. Man, how did I miss the starter kit? I bet you I've got it written on here somewhere and I just haven't said anything. The starter kit is one of the most awesome tools. Now, if you're not using the adventure, carrying the box around can be a drag. But the core rules in there and the pre-generated character sheets and the dice, really helpful tools. Grab those things and take them with you. I think I actually used the book. It's like a magazine type book. I used that more than my player's handbook when I first got it, and it survived longer. Oh, seriously, it really did. But the Dungeons and Dragons 5e starter kit is a very awesome tool, and even though once you've finished Lost Mine of Phandelver, the stuff in there can be very, very helpful. So till next time, keep rolling those 20s. And I don't know what has happened to my dice. Is it? I found it. This was my dice. So keep rolling those 20s and keep watching my videos. I'm not going anywhere.